everyone. My name is Chris Watson. I'm from Endor Learn and Develop. Great to be with you today. We're looking at and focusing on non-verbal communication and particularly applied body language, and see that there's much more to this area than just trying to guess what someone's feeling by their posture or by the gestures that they're using. Okay, welcome aboard. Accurately be able to interpret those signals so you'll be more mindful and more effective at understanding actually what is being relayed, and that can be knowingly or unknowingly. The majority of the material that we're going to cover today applies to Western preferences, and that's quite important, that distinction, because especially around gestures, and it is mainly around gestures, there are significant variations depending upon the cultural setting. So we will acknowledge that. And ultimately we'll get to the stage where you're going to be able to apply, without doubt, the most robust approach to understanding non-verbal communication and applied body language, and that's something called the 5 C's. And what we're going to do is say, well, do these really hold up? Yeah? Is this what body language is really about, non-verbal communication? Because, without overstating it, 80% plus of articles you'll see in popular press will suggest that that is the case. And that's this single approach to reading and interpreting non-verbal communication. It's a one bullet, and they're hoping to hit everything. So let's take it all back and let's relate non-verbal communication to the basics of communication. This is a terrific model. It's by Stephen Covey. Anyone that knows Stephen Covey, I know this tale, or certainly Louisa from Axbro, her former boss, a lady called Janet Dixon, was a massive advocate of Stephen Covey, who wrote The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He created a hierarchy. First of all, says before you can communicate to anyone, what you've got to be able to do is empathise with them. Okay? So you need to be able to put yourself in their shoes. Then you need to be able to articulate what it is that you have to say. Thirdly, not a surprise, but you've also got to be able to listen. Communication is a two-way, not a one-way street, and hopefully your message should be accurate, brief and clear, and then you should be able to test the other person's understanding of what you've said by getting some feedback and listening to that. For Stephen Covey, the highest and the most sophisticated form of communication is this at the top of the pyramid, which is about understanding the subtleties and the nuances of both facial gestures and non-verbal communication, body language. So you're going to have to go over, introduce yourself as if it was a business meeting or a networking event, but do it in a particular way, please. In what way?
More body movement.
So is that you said to itself? More body movement?
Body movement. Hands perhaps, head, body leaning forward.
So
more tactile.
More tactile. Great. And in what way? How did that express itself then?
Handshakes, kind of more open, like
closer as well.
around lost.
This is about the energy in the room, and that's quite an invisible thing, about something that you can't really touch, but you'll pick up on if you go into a really sterile or dull meeting, won't you? You'll feel that sense of lethargy. We've all been there, unfortunately. And also, if there's a frisson in there, because of that energy that's created, actually you've got that control that in an instant, if you decide to make that change, that mental adjustment, you can transform any interpersonal situation that you want to. What it reminds us of is the fact that actually the amount of control and the amount of power you have, and that you can choose to apply in any situation, even for people you don't know, and it's a strange environment. You can actually switch that on and off at will. 2 volunteers, please. Just 2 volunteers. It's nothing too intrusive, honestly. But what I am going to do is just ask 2 people, ideally 1 male and 1 female, just to come here to the front. You have to say a single thing, and we will not be, thank you very much, we will not be looking at your body language per se. And what I'd like you to do is just sort of face each other, and if you could, Andy, if you could just come back a little bit, please. Gary, you stay there. I want you just sort of move forward until you're at the right sort of position to have a conversation that you feel comfortable. So that sort of spatial distance that you're sort of happy with. Okay. So there are some additional considerations for today. Everything that we're going to cover isn't black and white. Absolutely none of it is saying this is definitively the answer, because it's interpretive, not factual evidence. So over-reliance and a sort of dogmatic, this is the case, this is how that person is feeling, is really dangerous. Congruence, as I've hinted already, is the key thing. Yeah? A congruence between what people are saying and how they're expressing it is the best thing to look for. Generally, it's an interesting one. The younger the person, the easier it is to read their non-verbal communication. Why might that be the case?
Because you can learn, as you go older, you learn how to hide your feelings a bit.
Absolutely, yeah. You become more sophisticated, you learn strategies. Like this, what does this tend to mean? Okay, yeah, certainly in the UK, in the West, okay. But the meaning's certainly not universal. Similarly, Bulgarians, yeah, so that can be used for no, this can be used for yes, so completely confusing if you're ordering something. Japan, an eyebrow flash. I use my eyebrows quite a lot, yeah, it's sort of like a way of expressing or underlining different things. But if you're with a group of Japanese students, for example, it can be a sexual connotation to raising your eyebrows quite regularly. So you're really on dangerous ground before you start. India, rude to sort of point your feet towards people. In sort of Saudi and Arab countries, you've probably heard about sort of showing the soles of your feet as well. Is also inappropriate. Chile, palm upwards and spreading fingers, you might be perceived as stupid, and yet many politicians do that to show in this country that they're open and unguarded about things. There's plenty of variations. Even something like eye contact, we were saying improves significantly on the second version of that exercise. In an Aboriginal culture, maintaining eye contact with someone is seen as really disrespectful. Now, this is my pet hate, okay? And this is, if you look in any communication book and in most body language books, so this is the sort of the equation that's always body language, facial expressions, 55. So you're actually talking, including vocal tones and intonation and so forth. 93% of the communication is non-verbal. Staggering, isn't it? It's not the words that are being expressed. Now, this is always cited, and you go on the web, you'll find this if you like, and read any Alan Pease, who's probably the prominent writer in this field. He's getting on a bit now, and it's definitely in his books, but it is nonsense in the way that it's presented. The information is correct. But you think about it, if you're a photocopier that's broken, and the photocopier guy saying, look, your paper's jamming because what's happening is it's on that spindle there, and it's catching, so you need to feed it in this particular way. 90% of that information, communication, is being relayed by the words. I'm not taking nuances about his posture, I'm not looking for congruence with what he's saying and how he's positioning his body. And what Mehrabian said, which is where this comes from, is that actually at times of communication with emotional content, and specifically that, and this is where it gets misinterpreted, then that's when non-verbal aspects really come to the fore. Okay? Not everyday communication. Sometimes to get a point over, what you would do is you would slow down, and if anything, you turn down the volume. And that makes people listen. Yeah? But if you wanted to add energy into a room, what you can do is choose to speed it up and actually add energy by making it quicker and faster. So you've got tremendous options before we even get into what you think today's probably about, and we will get there, just through your voice and your vocal choices, and only you can make those. Now, bearing in mind what I said before about this progressive element to being a volunteer, what I'd now like to do is keep on this subject. So, first of all, just to confirm, are you right or left-handed? Right-handed, that's great. That's the most important thing. Tell me about yourself. I know you work at Axgrove. What do you like to do outside of work? Lovely. Whereabouts are you walking?
We like Bakewell.
Lovely. Yeah. What sort of things make you laugh?
Nervous. I don't know. Light-hearted stuff. Funny people.
Have you got any preference for comedians?
Evans.
Lee Evans, right? Yeah. Quite sort of animated, isn't it? Quite sort of physical. Excellent. Of all your relatives, who's got the longest hair?
My niece.
Your niece.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Which of your feet's warmer at present?
That's freezing.
I don't know. That one. Formal language, which is one of the subtlest forms, and it's to do with something called lateral eye movement. And again, there's lots of misinformation about lateral eye movement. But the reason I'm highlighting this is because actually about the subtleties of the communications that you're sending out all the time. There is misinformation about this. Some people say, oh yes, if your eyes look to the top right, that means you're lying. And this is another cosmopolitan article, if you like, in the making for you. It doesn't mean that at all. It definitely doesn't mean it if you're left-handed. But it might indicate an area that you want to probe a little bit more. And let me show you why. The eyes particularly are the most reliable source of non-verbal information that you can glean from someone. And an appropriate amount of eye contact is a great foundation for building trust and rapport. Now, an appropriate amount of eye contact isn't 100% of the time, all of the time, when you're talking with someone, because actually that's quite uncomfortable for both of us, isn't it? And that, if anything, is quite aggressive. Yeah? So an appropriate amount actually tends to be about 40% of the time when we're delivering, i.e. we're conveying information, and about 70% of the time when we're listening. So it's not even 100% when we're listening either. So there needs to be some sort of breaks in there. Here's an attractive woman. If anyone can see this clearly, I hope you can. I'm going to show you a slightly adjusted photo of her. Okay, it's almost exactly the same. And I wonder, this is photo 1, and that's photo 2.
So her eyes are a bit brighter.
Yeah, they are here, yes. The pupils are dilated. This is really interesting. Most people know that actually when you see something you like, your pupils involuntarily open. Okay, they actually want, your body physiologically wants more of that data or more of that information in. And that can even be in a business meeting, a performance review or whatever. You see something or you see someone you like, yeah? And even if it's in a sort of quite a bright room, your pupils will dilate more. And this is where you'll get the sort of statements like, oh, they had a twinkle in their eye, yeah, or you know, these sort of things about their eyes lit up when you said that, because actually physiologically their eyes do light up, because more light comes in and bounces off the back of the retina, and you actually see a glint in the eye. Here's what's really interesting, though, that's been known for quite a while, is that when you hear something you like, your pupils dilate as well. Not just when you see it. If you're a real observer of the human condition, actually, and you start sort of detaching yourself from the content of what's going on and looking at the sort of people and behaviour and non-verbal communication, you can actually sometimes even see changes in terms of people's pupils and what's happening. And just to be specific about this, what she's obviously doing, if you like, is expanding the size of her body, her frame, and also something else going on. Anyone notice anything else? And so if you're really critical, really observant about that body posture, anything else that's...
Is it a head wheel?
It is, yeah, you're quite right. The chin is just rocked back a little bit. Is that okay? Now, don't rock it back too much, crack your neck. So, you don't need to wear the lycra. But if you could stand up, please, and also if you could move in a little bit this way, so it will be explained, you know, in addition to it being really funny to look at. So whenever you're ready, okay, we need to see this shot, a la Jessica. Okay, we've got a couple of people and some tilting going on. Again, what's all that about? Well, really interesting around here. I mean, what would you say that's a more powerful posture, if you like, or a more passive posture? Yeah. Genetically blind people, if they win a race, do exactly the same as this. So it's not learned behaviour. But his landmark study was he took some of the best in class of recruiters, headhunters, and in the late 70s there was something called competency-based interviewing which came to the fore. And instead of just trying to find out, tell me about yourself and look through your CV, if you like, competency-based interviewing tried to put people in different situations, yeah, and find out their responses to some behaviourally based encounters, yeah. And then you could probe on whatever the competencies are that are expected by the organisation. So he took the best in class of headhunters. Okay, these people have been trained in competency-based interviewing, which stresses that actually your responses should be based on the evidence you receive and not on your gut feeling. Yeah, that's the whole driver for what's called CBI. So I'll show you the results, actually, or an abridged version of the results. And here they are. And what they found, there's an incredible variation. It wasn't quite what they were expecting. Any observations about that, though? Any observations about what you see here in terms of the patterns? And what that says is, boy, are these first impressions important? Yeah? Not because actually it's all of the only chance you've got, but because of the prejudices and the bias of the interviewer that actually you're sat in front of. I'm not sure about this person. I tend to hold on to that bias and I look for things to reinforce it. Because if I don't, that says my professional judgment is poor. Does that make sense? And I'm constantly, if I have a few of those in a day where I think this isn't going to go well, but actually they're dazzling, then all of a sudden it's threatening my own self-image, and you're not likely to do that. Back to the police force, this is where their training begins on this subject area, and where their interviews begin, and where we should all begin as well. Because we are all completely different, and the first thing to observe is people's baseline behaviour. At the televised interviews, the polls really separated because people start to draw conclusions about what they were saying. The interesting thing is, looking at that, why? What do you think is, and it is Barack Obama's baseline behaviour, what's the impression that you get from that? And it's a head tilted back, by the way.
Confidence.
It is confidence. Anything else? There is a little bit of arrogance there, isn't there? Because you're right, it is linked to confidence, but it's a winning, and it's a slight superiority thing. And people did pick up on this. And it's a baseline behaviour for him, though. Now, that was pretty bad, but much worse was Jim McCain's baseline behaviour, okay? Which you can see here, which is what, do you think?
Lying, because he's got his eyes closed.
Well, it does come across really, particularly with men, that actually, yeah, there are some untruths going on. Yeah? It can either be sort of untruths, yeah, not trustworthy, yeah, or nervous. Effective combination there, if you like, when you're up for the presidency of the United States. And you know, a lot of people picked up on this. And all I'm saying here is start with baseline behaviours first. Now, a lot of the other indicators you'll be familiar with. Arms folded. What does this mean? Closed mind. Closed mind. Anything else? Defensive. Huh? Absolutely. Well, and this is the thing. With body language, it actually doesn't matter about the rationale. It only matters about the impact. That's staggering, and that's really something to remember, because you'll self-justify and think, well, I've always done this, and that's the way I am. The impact is still the same, because if I'm talking to people like this, the actual effect for them, it doesn't matter what my rationale is. I mean, because how does that feel now at the moment, Michelle? It is uncomfortable, isn't it? Because, and you can transform it straight away. Evidence, and it's strong evidence as well, that this congruence that the mind seeks, your mind is actually more open if you have an open body posture. So you can transform your receptivity to things as well, even if you don't particularly want to. In cases where people have had a closed body posture in the meeting and tested about what they've retained, on average, not exclusively, they'll retain 40% less information with a closed body posture than they will if they have an open body posture. That's amazing. And it might be because, you know, the colds, they're right next to a drafty window. There's all these, you know, reasons. They once broke their arm, if you like, and so they just got into that habit. But the impact and the effect is massively different. Now, from a training perspective, that creates some issues, because I'm not going to, sorry to pick me, just but Jason, I can't say to Jason, you know, we've just been doing about this. You've got a closed body posture, and from a professional point of view, I can't let this continue, because you're going to retain 40% less information than if you do like Gary. Because actually it's going to make you feel quite defensive, isn't it? What you could always do is say, actually you couldn't help me with this, and just put the ticks on the board, could you? There are ways around it. But highlighting people's body language is certainly not the way to go. If we're trying to mask something else, we will get what's called leakage. And that's a very unpleasant term. But leakage tends to be where there is a lack of congruence. And you will know it yourself. You know, there'll be times when you're looking at someone, you're talking with someone, that actually you've just got, and you don't know what it is. People call it intuition. Actually, I don't believe in intuition. The notion of the sixth sense is quite seductive, but I'm not sure there's much science behind it. But what I think there is, an unknowing ability sometimes to pick up on areas where there's no congruence. What's really going on here? What is actually being transmitted? Physically, what's the person doing to themselves? They are. It's self-protection, if you like. So they're protecting themselves from what that suggests. And don't forget, it's all about impact. You don't know the good thing about this part of it. You don't need to get into their psyche. That's the impact that it has. They're sending out a message that they're protecting themselves for whatever reason. Now this is an interesting one. Someone in the public eye, every film I've ever seen of this person, they do this. And when they're walking around, who does this?
Prince Charles.
100%. So you look on any footage. Now, what is this? Because actually, what he does, he fiddles with either a watch or his cufflinks. Okay, and might be a bit cynical, but I don't think in his position there's anything wrong with his watch or his cufflinks. I think they're probably pretty good watches and cufflinks. Yeah. So what is this really about then?
He might just be very proud of his cufflinks.
Might be, yeah.
What else to do with his hands?
Exactly. I mean, it's what's called a disguised arm barrier. He knows you can't walk in the British public, you can't walk around this because actually that doesn't work, it doesn't send out the message. But conversely, he's not Robbie Williams, thank goodness, but he's not going to be like, hi, or anything like that. So what he's got, there's a bit of tension there. He knows he needs an open body posture. He knows, if you like, that he's not going to feel comfortable doing that. So he creates a reason for that not to quite happen, but it's not a closed body posture. Here's a tip, another time I'm giving you some strange tips, but if you are in that boring meeting, yeah, and let's face it, we've all been there, and your body will belie, it will undermine you every time, and it will let people know that you're not really switched on or anything, but you can transform it, because by doing this is sending out a signal about where the point of focus is. So if you do that, okay, by slightly touching, women can do this one, this is a gender bias, but slightly better than men, but the slight contact, if you like, with the mouth makes you appear to be more reflective, okay, so you're actually taking data in. And all of a sudden, you're switched on, you see. This is someone who's really alert, if you like, even if you're not. So you can fake it till we make it with some of these things. What about this one? Tony Blair's the master of this, isn't he? But what's going on here?
I think it's supposed to be like showing that you're open, but to me it kind of comes off a bit the other way.
It can, and I think Tony Blair particularly overdid it to the extent he came across like a Blue Peter presenter, and a bit almost pleading, rather than authoritative. But you're right. Why? In theory, should that come across as more open and more sincere?
Listening to what people are saying, and you're open to suggestions coming in.
Yeah. There's no arm barriers. Definitely. Anything else though about it as well?
Nothing to hide, sort of thing.
It is. It's the open palm, and this is sort of again behaviourism, but actually nothing to hide. You see everything. That makes sense. Interestingly, though, there's a big difference in bringing it to modern day between that and that. And someone uses this all the time. Any idea who uses this all the time to add drama and instill fear? Donald Trump, yeah. And it's a imagine a sort of small difference. Donald Trump is a master at, and he's very congruent as well, at, the message that he's saying, what he's saying. So with synchronistic between his body language and the words that he uses. He's brilliant at it. Like him or loathe it. He excels in that area. Encountered this? You ever seen this at all?
Around somewhere else.
Yeah, there's a bit of sort of, isn't there? Any other calls? Sorry?
Being cocky.
Cocky? Why is it cocky? I mean, I don't disagree, but why would you say it's cocky?
Well, because you're sort of above everybody else. You're sort of,
There is a bit of arrogance. There is definitely that sort of relaxed thing, yeah, sort of superiority, yeah.
You're not telling me anything I don't know already.
Yeah, in fact, if anything, it's commonly thought to be a sort of convince me sort of mode, really. You're going to have to really prove it to do that. But what physically is the person doing?
Looking up and away.
Yeah.
Not to the.
What about the space that they're occupying? Bigger. So there is a thing whereby they're trying to make themselves more powerful looking, if you like, by, remember the Jessica Ennis thing. And it's an interesting one, this one. Knowingly or not knowingly, when I've seen this most commonly displayed, is when it's someone who wants you to know that they're in a position of authority but maybe don't yet feel comfortable in it. It's a power play. It's saying to people, I'm the top dog. The one thing I would never do is mirror that. Because actually what this person is saying to you is, I want you to know who's going to pay that cheque if we decide to work with you. Yeah? And actually, so all that's saying to me reading body language is, this person wants me to know, so I'm going to defer. So I'll be saying things like, look, I know you're a busy man, Mark. I know, like you it's great that you could see us today. I really appreciate it. What we'd like to do is take you through the steps. This will be on the lawns of the White House, Rabin and Arafat for the Palestine agreements. Real moment. This image was sent around the world by Getty. You know, it was every publication. What's it also saying though? Just like to look at the body language. What's also going on?
Who's in charge?
Yeah, who is in charge? He's certainly the facilitator, isn't he? He's the one, if you like, that's brought these people together. Yeah. Anything else? Any other? Who in the handshaking of these two equal partners that are now coming together has got the, has got the
Like
better
ever for green isn't it?
There is that, sorry?
The hand on the top.
Ah, right, okay, yeah. What Arafat's doing is being really stoic, which is an assertive position to occupy, yeah? He's not leaning in or anything like that. And that's forced Rabin to actually lean in, yeah? But what he's done, he's affected his own power play by, he's doing this. Because actually, he's occupying the sort of upper ground. By doing that, we're fascinated by people who are experiencing discomfort for some reason. I think there's a curiosity about that. And I think part of that curiosity is driven by the fact that you do get more leakage, you get a lot more, you get behaviour that's easier to spot during times of duress, and people do revert in stress, we digress, so they do revert to more authentic types, so it's a fascinating sort of area. But this is a polygraph. Polygraphs actually tell you a lot about body language as well. Polygraphs basically look at two things. Okay, they'll look at your heart rate, okay, if it's going up, if it's going down. But also they'll look at the GSO, your galvanic skin response. And what your galvanic skin response is, basically, you'll know. It's moisture, just tiny bits of moisture in the skin. And you will perspire, even unknowingly, if you like, during moments of duress. Okay? And all it does, it sends an electrical current through your finger, and more of that current can pass if there's moisture, and less of it can pass if there isn't. And that's basically what the lie detector's about. I've seen cartoons, and when the man's under pressure, he goes, and all the steam comes up and everything. So people now say, so if you see someone, if you like, itching the collar, that means they're lying. What's your thoughts on that one?
An itchy neck.
Might have an itchy neck, absolutely, wrong collar size. So again, watch out, one thing doesn't mean another. But it's also about when things happen. Because if I say to someone, if I say Hannah, or Hannah says to me, Chris, we still haven't got that payment for. And I say, yeah, I'm really busy. But I sent it yesterday, last night it went. Now that's interesting. Doesn't mean to say I'm lying, but it's at that moment that's really unusual. And that's what you're looking for. When things happen and what it is that happens. Does that make sense? And here's why. There is some science behind this. You know what I was saying about galvanic skin response and moisture in the skin? What happens, do you think, to hairs on your skin if there's moisture? Little bits of perspiration. They do. And guess what? Men particularly, they've got their hairline goes further down, and even though it will often be cut shorter, those hairs will stand up and it will involuntarily make you itch. And that's why if that person's saying it at that moment, I can't say you're definitely lying, but I certainly want to find out a little bit more about that invoice and when you sent it. ladies and men, and anyone with a male partner, okay, watch out for this. This is a red flag. Were you with that woman last night at the Bird in the Barley? No, I was nowhere near the Bird in the Barley. If you get that, at that moment of response, boy, probe and dig all you like, because, and this is, I know it's only a male thing. I don't know if it's because women are more mindful that they might have eye makeup on or whatever, but it only happens with men. But it's the furious rub of the eye, yeah? And if it happens when you're asking a direct question, watch out. That's the best tip I can give you on that one. What makes some leaders more effective in roles? What is it more powerful people do? i.e. they're more assertive, yeah, they're more confident, they have lower stress levels, okay, and that can be tested through cortisol levels, and also they're more willing to take risks, entrepreneurs as well, okay? So all of those, so what it says, can you manufacture that? We know that non-verbal behaviour governs how others think about us. Think of everything we said about the impact of sort of your body and what you do. What's now coming through thick and fast and is much more interesting because it's stuff you can do something with. That non-verbal behaviour governs what we think and feel about ourselves. It means that you can change your mental state, actually your outcomes as well, by starting with your body language. Now normally everyone says the body language is an output of your emotional state, which it certainly is, but you can't influence your emotional state easily. But I tell you what, you can't easily change your physiology. And if that's the case, and if the two do sit hand in hand, then there's some significant opportunities there. This was Covey's research graduates to occupy and pose different powerful and less powerful body postures for just 120 seconds. These are some of the results. Risk tolerance after 2 minutes, okay, measure risk tolerance in the high power poses, in peacock modes and so forth. 86% of people were more likely to take risks and only 60% of people in the low power. So there's something happening. Testosterone, and women do have testosterone. In addition to the ovaries producing estrogen, they also produce testosterone. Not everyone knows that, but testosterone changes men and women overall. High power up 20% just from 2 minutes standing like this, or a sort of high power pose. Physiological changes in your body and in your bloodstream. Staggering. And those will take a long time to diminish. Low power, testosterone actually drops. Think of the contrast. How you sit, how you interact, how you engage with people. And even cortisol. I'm not discouraging going for a run or whatever, but there are some pretty easy to adopt things that will influence this. And I say this is measured by saliva and compared to control groups as well. But in the high power, cortisol levels, the stress hormone, went down by 25% after 120 seconds. And as you can see there, in terms of low power, actually the stress levels in people, the cortisol levels, stress hormone, went up by 15%. So you're talking a net difference of 40%. Really interesting. So it isn't fake it till you make it. It's actually fake it till you become it. Do you know what I mean? And there is actually opportunities around adopting and employing some of the sort of coverage that we've talked about. And that's interesting. So your bodies can change your minds. Your minds, let's face it, can change your behaviour. And no doubt about it, your behaviour can change the outcomes that you get. How do we make sense of all of this? The most popular method and the most popular model is behaviourism. And the problem with it is, it's used as well to explain body language, but the problem is that it's too simplistic. Because what invariably you do for an exercise now is to say, what do What's the body language, this table of an aggressive person? What's the body language of an assertive, of a passive, and of a passive aggressive? And you come up with some really interesting things. Yeah. For example, what do you think the body language of an aggressive person would be? Yeah, definitely. Really invading your personal territory. Yeah. What might their voice be like?
Deep and loud.
Yeah, loud, sharp, clipped. Yeah, dominating. The problem with it as a model to explain body language, though, is that it's that one bullet again. And it's this notion that you start to look for someone that's wagging their finger, and which model does that fit in with nicely? Absolutely. So that's it. Fait accompli, you know, box ticked if you like, badge on the person, they're very aggressive, they're very assertive, they're a bit submissive. And what you tend to do is you look for single indicators and then come up with all sorts of solutions. So actually, once you start thinking about people's cultural variations, you start thinking about where they're from, you start thinking about the situation, you start thinking about the issue they had, if you like, with the water bill this morning, and there's more going on, all of a sudden people's ability to read body language deteriorates massively. So I will send you this, and this is a much more helpful way, it's called clusters. What I encourage you to look for are positive and negative clusters. There is a downside to being smarter at knowing what to look for in terms of non-verbal communication, or a consequence of it. I.e., if clusters are more effective than behavioural models, okay, and I implore you to remember that because they absolutely are, what does that put on you? What onus is on you, if you like? What have you got to be good at to be able to identify not just one thing at once? Anyone can spot that. What have you got to be pretty good at? You do. You need to be exactly that, Gail. You need to be an observant person, and you need to be able to pick up on the full range of all of those behaviours that we identified from that very first exercise. Yeah. So about tone, about inference, about posture, about eye contact. Now that's a big ask. So this all of a sudden has got to get further up on the list of priorities in those communications. And actually, if you remember to do that, it doesn't have to become quite liberating. There are people who are good at this, and there are people who are less successful at the moment. And the final thing we're going to do is we're going to find out how good you are. Okay?